This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. It's episode 457 of the Craft Beer and Brewing podcast. I'm down in Niwot, Colorado for this week's episode, and joining me is Cory Buenning of Fritz Family Brewers. Welcome to the podcast, Cory.
Thanks for having me, Jamie.
I love that I get to have this conversation within driving distance of my home and office. Popped down here. It was a beautiful day to stare at the mountains as I drove down here. We've got this little cloud layer over here that's blocking some of the direct sun, so it's cooler and darker in the foreground, but then that sun's just hitting the mountaintops out there with this like beautiful kind of peachy tones on the white snow. It's pretty spectacular.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, Fritz family, you all are known for lager brewing here, but you as a brewer have spent a lot of time out here in the Mountain West, up in Jackson Hole, Snake River, a little bit out east for a little while. And you decided, but you actually went to school down here in Boulder and came back over here, if I get the story correct, right?
That's correct.
You can tell the whole thing when we get into that segment of the podcast. But, for those of us that know, Fritz Family is a favorite. Those who are hardcore podcast listeners may realize that we have recorded one other podcast episode here at Fritz Family a number of years ago. Stan Hieronymus and I met up and used the back to record his, it was the Critics List episode that I did back then. And, it was a nice halfway spot between the two of us. And that was a beautiful time. And it was really fun to come and drink your beer here. And now we have the conversation with you. Fritz, well known for lagers amongst those here in Colorado. And, of course, this is a state with a lot of good lager brewers. So to stand out in that kind of environment takes some work. But like I said, you've been doing it for many decades now and, have earned that reputation. So we're going to talk about lager brewing. We're going to talk about Kölsch, because that was one of the beers that Stan put on his personal critics list from you. And, maybe even by the end of it, we'll talk about this crazy intersection of lager brewing and IPA, which you are here for. Before we do that,
hey brewers, Justin here from G&D Chillers. We're all about solving problems in the brewhouse, staying ahead of the curve and building chillers that work as hard as you do.
That's right. G&D's new Elite 290 Micro Series runs on a natural refrigerant with near zero global warming potential, built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. They recently built one for New Belgium Brewing, delivering around 50% energy savings over CO2 systems and 9% more efficiency than A2Ls. That's real-world impact from a brewery that knows what it takes. With 24/7 support and remote monitoring, your cold side stays dialed in day or night. Learn more about sustainable chiller solutions at gdchillers.com. And Berkeley Yeast just launched Dry Tropics London, their best-selling liquid yeast strain. Now with all the ease of use benefits of dry yeast, Dry Tropics London delivers the soft, pillowy mouthfeel and juicy character you'd expect from a top-tier London ale strain, but with a serious upgrade, a burst of thiols that unleash vibrant, layered notes of grapefruit and passion fruit. A lot of brewers love the clean passion fruit you get from Tropics, but they don't want every IPA to be a tropical fruit bomb. At the dry yeast price point, you can pitch and ditch without breaking the bank, or you can co-pitch with your house strain to adjust the intensity of the notes. And with nationwide free shipping, there's never been a better time to try Dry Tropics. Order now at berkeleyyeast.com and experience the ease and impact of Dry Tropics London yeast. Also, this episode is sponsored by PackTech, delivering craft beer multi-packing you can trust. PackTech's handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable, helping breweries close the loop and advance the circular economy. With a minimalist design, durable functionality you can rely on, and custom color matching, PackTech helps brands stand out while staying sustainable. Trusted by craft brewers nationwide, they offer a smarter, sustainable way to carry your beer. To learn more, visit packtech-opi.com. That's PAKTECH-OPI.com. Before we start, some crazy news in the out there in the Colorado world this week. I was just thinking about that.
GABF outside.
GABF outside.
Right before you showed up, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it, right? GABF outside. How do you feel about that, Cory?
I don't know. I have heard a lot of people are questioning the BA's decision on that, but I feel like they have a bit more experience organizing the GABF than us outsiders. And I like outside beer fests. Like my wife pointed out, most beer fests are outside. We can only think of a handful that are actually inside. Collab Fest and GABF being the only two that I've been to. So I'm all for it.
I'm open-minded, and I will assume the best until proven otherwise. I think that they are good at setting these events up and know the challenges that they're getting into. I will say we have run the Minnesota Craft Beer Fest at the Convention Center in Minnesota, and the prices are so outrageous now on convention center rentals, and they have just continued to increase and increase and increase, that we can no longer afford to do that at the convention center, and have looked for other venues, and that we don't have a plan for this year, and so it may not even happen because of that. So I completely understand the challenges that the BA is going through, and I think that so it's hard to second guess them on that. Yes, it will be challenging, but I should also mention, also in Minnesota, you've got the growler, the winter growler, where they do it outside in February in Minnesota, and 6,000 people come and drink beer, even it's double the single digit teen temperatures. If we're hardy and we can handle it,
I just want the out of state brewers to show up. That's the key.
I think these are important. And, I've had this conversation with a number of brewers. These rituals that we engage in, they are meaningful and they are important. And it is great to see people all in one place, at CBC, in the spring, and at GABF in the fall, and that kind of community coming back together. It is really, really important. So I agree with you. Like, we want to see everybody. It's important that we don't lose that, or that somehow this gets lost in this kind of negative narrative. Now, Saturday, Sunday outdoors, like, that's going to be different. I'm gonna miss that Thursday night where everyone's excited, and the crowds aren't too crazy yet, and I'm gonna miss that Saturday afternoon metal session where brewers are wearing their medals around their neck. I mean, we're gonna make some new traditions this year.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was just on my mind. You're close to it. You're wearing your World Beer Cup fleece right now. You're in the mix on all of this stuff. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic.
I think we're signing up. We're going to have a booth this year. So,
oh, that's good. That's good. Well, let's tell me your story. And your brewing history spans several different states, and several number of different decades now. Goes back to the 90s, and before we started, we were reminiscing. Like, I think I went to that brewery you worked for, Snake River up in Jackson Hole, that year that you started working there in 1997, and so you go way back. But tell me that kind of arc through brewing. Tell me your story.
Jamie, I'm going to go back even a little bit further than that to late 70s, early 80s. I grew up in Waukesha, Wisconsin, which is outside of Milwaukee. And
I've been to Waukesha.
I come from a beer drinking family. My mom has 9 brothers who are all farmers in South Dakota, German heritage. So they would inevitably come out to Milwaukee to visit us, and we'd take them on brewery tours. It'd be Miller, Schlitz, Pabst. Pabst still had a brewery back then. It was, the whole city smelled like a brewery. And I just remember being a little kid, I don't know, probably, 6th, 7th grade, walking along these brewery tours, especially the Miller one. You'd go down to the caverns, and they had a movie, and it just, like, I don't know, it did something to me that I don't really know exactly what it did. But fast forward to my freshman year at Boulder, 1991, I walk on the hill. They had a homebrew shop, and I just remember walking by it going, homebrew? I can make beer at home. So I walked in the next day, gave them my $40 or whatever it was, got my plastic bucket, 5-gallon bucket, extract, and started home brewing, and that became more and more serious, and eventually all grain, the story. And I got a job at the homebrew shop, and when it came time for me to graduate CU with a degree in biology, my choices were go for more schooling, get a doctorate or a master's if I wanted to do anything in environmental biology, or start brewing. And at the time, I was like, I'm kind of tired of school. I've been going to school for a long time, and I'm really, really into this brewing thing. So a customer...
But it's the mid-'90s at that point, or mid to latter half of the 90s.
Yeah, 94, 93, 94.
It wasn't as if there were like craft breweries growing on trees, and it wasn't. I mean, it was if you were going to thinking about brewing, you're thinking probably about brewing at a large brewery or of some sort.
Yeah, there was a customer of ours at the homebrew shop, What's Brewing, Caleb, who worked up at Tommy Knockers in Idaho Springs, and he said, we're hiring we're looking for someone to work for us and on the bottling line. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So I went up there, and I think I worked on the bottling line for a total of 3 days before I was in the brew house. And it was a lot of fun. Learned a lot about commercial brewing, and
we knew a guy. We got this guy that knows how yeast works. Let's put him to work.
Yeah. So I was going through some personal stuff at the time, and the head brewer there, who's still there, Steve Aruni, he used to work with a guy, Chris Erickson, who's the head brewer up at Snake River, and he knew they were looking for a brewer up there, and he knew how much I liked fly fishing and snowboarding, and Jackson would probably be a good fit for me. So we drove up there, and I interviewed for a job up at Snake River and got that job and packed up everything I could in my Chevy S10 pickup, moved up there not knowing one person, slept on the Teton Pass, woke up the next morning and showed up for work, and spent 17 years snowboarding and making beer up at Snake River.
Hell yeah.
And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. The winter started to get a little long for my wife, and my wife's sister and husband were in the process of opening a brewery in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. And I was kind of consulting for them, helping them with hop contracts and brewing equipment and stuff like that. And, when you've been brewing the same place for 17 years and all of a sudden you're coming up with brand new recipes for a brewery that's not even open yet, like the wheels started turning. Next thing you know, I'm like, yeah, I'll brew for you. So I left Snake River and we moved to Kentucky.
And we should say, like, in that tenure at Snake River, there are lots and lots of GABF metals. Lots and lots. I looked it up before I came. Snake River as a whole, from start to the current time, which is not the entirety of your tenure, it's 40 GABF metals. And more than half of those are going to be, in your tenure there, maybe, significantly more than half.
It was a different time back then, Jamie. Some of those lager categories only had 30 entries versus nowadays where it's 230. But yeah, it was.
You still had them in the 20 teens. There are still a number of them. And, but I think, there was that kind of focus on well-executed classic beers. And, in some ways, like, because they were around and stayed current, even though they were these classic beers, like, they kept resonating with judges and stuff. Anyway, just wanted to point that out.
So yeah, we moved to Louisville, Kentucky. Started that. It took us a long time to get that brewery going. I drove for Uber for a little while and actually ended up bartending for a minute because I started brewing when I was 19, home brewing, and basically have only had a job in the brewing industry, and I'm in my 50s now. So I didn't really have too many marketable skills besides brewing. So I was beer tending and driving for Uber. Brewery finally opened. Didn't work out. We sold our share. Me and my wife sold our share, and we moved to Colorado in March 2020. So right during the beginning of the pandemic. And like I said, all I know how to do is brew. No one was really hiring then. I wasn't really looking for a job. So we just were going to hang out, and I got a homebrew set up, back to home brewing, just going to hang out in Colorado for a while. And then we had some friends tell us about a park in Niwot, People's Park. So we came here and drove by this place that had a for sale sign on it. And I was like, that kind of looks like a brewery. So we kind of drove over to the parking lot, and I peeked into the window and I saw some tanks in there, and I was like, this is a brewery for sale. All right. So through connections, I found out it was Bootstrap, and they had moved locations to Longmont, and this building was for sale. And we had no plans on really opening a brewery quite yet. I mean, it was still very much pandemic times. But it seemed like too good of an opportunity to pass up. So me and my wife put together a business plan, got a loan, bought the place, and opened up in, 2026 now.
Time flies when you're having fun.
We've been open it'll be 5 years in July. So that would be 2021.
July of 2021. Okay.
Yeah.
Easy time to open a brand new brewery.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, this was the old Bootstrap location. It looks a little different now than it did when Bootstrap was in here. And I did come here when it was Bootstrap. But you put a new brew house in there, a new brew system and everything. What did it take to get it back up and running as a brewery again?
Well, they had drains in the floors, and that's basically the only thing that we really kept. Moved the coolers around. They had already sold the brewing equipment, so we bought brand new equipment, exactly how I wanted it, set it up, small, it's 77 person capacity. We do about 325 barrels a year. But it's awesome. Like when we moved here after working at Gravely in Kentucky, you're just like, when you're your own boss, owner and brewer, it was kind of tough to think about like, am I going to go apply for a job and like have a boss? It's tough.
Sure. But then, coming at it with also that kind of front of house as well as, brewing experience, you've kind of got this set up with hospitality in mind, a big bar that's built for regulars and for socializing, big community tables. And the things that people are probably going to hear in the background as we talk, these cuckoo clocks that are just offering, nice soft tones every now and then in the background. But it is this kind of fun feel of like, contemporary, but also like rooted in this kind of classical, but kind of cool sense.
Yeah. When we bought the space, we got I know my limitations. I'm not a designer, not an architect. So we hired an architect. We hired a designer, and the designer came in, and I said, I just have this idea. I just want to line the walls with cuckoo clocks. And she looked at me and she said, I love it. And then she came back the next day and just sent me a whole list of just different, like a lot of classic ones, but some other, avant-garde, modern looking ones just to mix in. And so she let me kind of have my cuckoo clock thing.
Super fun. So let's talk about the beer. I want to talk about, obviously this, as we have already mentioned, you're well known for the lager beer that you make, and and also we're kind of timed along with that. As lager has grown amongst the craft beer crowd coming out of the pandemic, you've been here, and with this kind of like, hey, this is drinkable beer that we can drink several of, and everyone's got to drive to get around here in Colorado. There's a small population in Niwot, but it's there's not that many people that can walk here, and anyway. So for that standpoint, and then a lot of it with this kind of scale of production, there are some kegs that go out to select places around the state, but really on the Front Range, but not a ton. Like distribution is not a big part of what you do. A lot of it's just based here in the tap room. So I want to talk about those kinds of beers you make and how you started building that beer program, coming at it fresh with a clean slate. Before we do that, the multi-layered wonders of indie hop strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into. Introducing Strata Cryo in collaboration with Yakima Chief Hops. Whether brewing up a single hop Strata IPA to wow customers with the depth of flavor this variety delivers, or modernizing your flagship IPA to continue setting the highest standards, Strata T90, Strata CGX, Strata Hyperboost, and now Strata Cryo provide the tools for brewers to create their unique masterpiece. Indie Hop Strata, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And this podcast is sponsored by the Midea 50/50 Flex, the industry's first dual compartment 3-way convertible freezer. The 50/50 Flex is designed to flex with your life. It can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Plus, with reversible doors and adjustable storage compartments, you can stay organized no matter what your food storage needs. The 50/50 Flex is also designed to maintain a stable temperature even in non-climate controlled spaces, so it's perfect for your garage, man cave, or wherever you need a little more space. Maybe use all 20 cubic feet as a beer fridge. Check out midea.com/US for more information on how to take your beer storage to the next level. Also, if your brewery is using fruit juice concentrates, purees, and blends, then why not source everything from a one-stop shop? Old Orchard might be best known for flavored blends, but if you need 100% purees or concentrates, then Old Orchard can likely help, even with options not listed on their website. Let Old Orchard know what you need at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Cory, you had a blank slate. You knew you had to make some beers. Now you got to think about what beers were going to connect with an audience for you here in Niwot. Where'd you start? And tell me about your creative process.
Okay, so it's lagers for sure, and German-focused lagers in particular. And I kind of forgot to mention back when I was in Boulder homebrewing that I got involved in the homebrew club here quite a bit, hot barley and the alers. And there was one gentleman in particular, Bill Hesse, who goes by Fog and other names. He's kind of a celebrity. He introduced me to lagers back at the homebrew club, and he was into brewing them and got me into brewing them, which was pretty easy to do because I have the German heritage and I always liked just, drinking beers, yellow beers, So I got into lager brewing back when I was even home brewing, and Snake River. Yep. I was pushing lagers there. Every brewery I went to, I was like, I want to do lagers. I want to ferment them colder. I want to make lagers. So when I got a chance to make my own brewery,
you want to take our tanks and you want to tie them up for those beers that people are going to want to pay less for? Great. Sure. What a good business idea.
Well, it turns out that the whole seems like the whole industry is kind of coming around to it now at this point. But I was always into the lagers. So when I got to make my own brewery, I was like lager focused. I do have limited space here, so I can't go too crazy. I don't have like a bunch of horizontal tanks I'm gonna tie up for a super long time. So, but I do have the capability of doing some step mashing, and for me, one of the most important things in lager brewing is, well, there's a lot of little tiny things that are important, but a big one is I like to knock out cold. So I knew that right away. I was like, I'm going to have a cold liquor tank. So I do have a dedicated cold liquor tank, even though like this time of year, the water is coming out around in the 40s. So I set it at 35 in my cold liquor tank, and I can knock out my lagers into the high 30s. I usually shoot for 40, 44, knock out really cold, aerate, moderate.
What is it about that really, really cold knockout and start that does it for you?
It reduces the esters. It keeps the yeast during that first stage. And then the other thing it allows me to do is I like to drop the cold break off the bottom of the cone the following day. So I'm a one-man show here. So I can't come in after I finish my brew. I can't come in 6 hours later and drop the cold break. I have to wait till the next morning to come in and do that. I mean, I don't have to, but I do have a life. So
right.
I come in the next morning, and if I knock out cold, the fermentation should just be starting, a couple bubbles coming out, and it's not ripping to where the cold break and the pH is dropping and the cold break's, in suspension and dissolve back into the beer. So I'm able to drop that cold break out. It gives it a nice, and if the yeast is healthy, and I'm really into yeast management, just having a really good, healthy pitch of high viability yeast cells, and you can knock out cold, and it should start fermenting the next day. And I just think that makes for a nice, clean beer to start. You're starting with a clean slate. The beer is not yeast is healthy. It's going to do its job. It makes the beer. The yeast is the most important part. And I like to focus on that.
Yeah, tell me more about this system. And we should definitely come back, talk about yeast and fermentation. You were a biology major after all. So, there's something to talk about there. But, as you mentioned, yes, you don't have lots of horizontal lagering tanks. You're brewing on a small pub scale with some tanks that are pulling multiple duty here. Talk about the system as a whole. But you also have oil jacketed system.
I do. I have an oil jacketed system, which has got some pluses and some minuses.
2 weeks in a row with brewers from Jaron and now you with the oil jacketed systems from the actual same producer.
I think it was just the right timing because the boiler I had in Kentucky, we had like a $3,000 repair because some of the tubes started leaking, and the boiler manufacturer said the water treatment wasn't correct. And I had a guy coming in for water treatment, a professional who set it up, and he pointed at the boiler manufacturer. And so both of them point their fingers at each other, and I got the bill. So I was kind of, the steam boiler maintenance thing was a little overwhelming. So I decided to go, the oil is electric. So it's electric heated.
Uses a reservoir with electric heating elements inside of it. Okay.
It has a reservoir of oil, thermal oil. I can heat it up. It's the heat transfer isn't quite as good as steam. So I have to run the temperature a little bit hotter on the oil than you would on low pressure steam. But it's been really good. And we were sold on it because it's electric. If we want to, which if we ever get the money, we're going to do it. We can get solar panels and become a lot more sustainable and, kind of produce our own energy here. And so that's kind of the plan.
Why go that route rather than say a direct electric heating element? And this is not a small, this is not a 3 or 5 barrel system you're brewing on.
No. I feel like you have to have the temperature of the elements really high, and I think you're going to get some scorching. So I'm trying to keep the heating medium as close to possible as to boiling so that I don't get a lot of those Maillard reactions and scorching and whatnot, and I like a really pale lager beer, and I'm trying not to pick up color. So I thought this was a good alternative.
Sure. And so it gives a nice even heat like steam does. It just, you have to shoot a little bit differently in terms of where the temperature goes in order to keep it there.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just a total tangent here, but one weird benefit of the oil heater is I make my own sauergut in-house, and the sauergut strain I have, I got from Weinsteffen, because even though I have a biology background, I don't have a lab here, and I don't really feel comfortable going just pure grain dust technique. I couldn't isolate a culture, so I spent the money, had them ship it out from Weinsteffen. But this lactic culture likes to be warm. It likes to be at 118, 120 to really start producing lactic acid. So that's two good things about that is I don't have to worry about cross-contaminating anything because it won't grow below like 90 degrees. So if I get some in my beer, it isn't going anywhere. It needs to be warm. But to incubate it, to ferment or to, create the lactic acid with it, I need to keep my kettle at that temperature. And I can set my oil at 122 and it'll keep my, I'm doing basically a kettle sour, but I'm creating a sauergut, and then I'd never ferment it. I just fill kegs of it and put it in my cooler, store it for a couple months, and use it in each batch. So that's how I naturally acidify all my lagers.
So yeah, tell me about that. This is instead of using a lactic acid addition to say adjust mash pH, you then use this lactic acid that you have made yourself.
Yes, exactly. And
how else does it show up in the brew process, or is that it?
That's it. I basically just adjust my mash pH with it. I used to adjust the pH in the kettle with it. I'm still not 100% Reinheitsgebot. I will throw a little bit of food grade lactic
It's okay.
in.
It's okay.
But I like to use
Those rules don't count here.
I know. I like to use a little bit of sauergut in the mash.
So why go to the trouble of making your own sauergut instead of in the mash, or for use in the mash, versus the lactic acid that you may also use later in the process, other than the romantic attachment to the Reinheitsgebot?
I think the romantic attachment is a big big component of it. To be honest, if I tasted a beer made with food grade lactic acid and one with my sauergut, I would be hard pressed to tell that there was a difference. But I also feel like there's 100 little things that you do to make lager beer that if you changed one of them, you wouldn't notice the difference. But altogether, they combine to make a better beer. So I think everybody's got their like little hill they like to die on. Some people are like, I'm going to triple decoct my beer. For me, it's like, I'm going to make my own sauergut in-house. So
then you make it every month or two and then just keg it up, or I guess maybe not even every month or two.
It's about every 2 months probably.
Okay.
I make just enough for like 5 kegs. I inject half a keg into each batch. My mash schedule, I'm really shooting for maximum attenuation is kind of what my goal is. Almost every beer I make, like Pilsners, Dortmunder, Helles, I want attenuation in the 82 is okay, but I'm shooting for more like 85% attenuation.
Why?
It comes to drinkability.
Okay.
For me. Like if you have a beer that has a lot of dextrins in it, this is just personal taste. I might have a beer and that's good. Okay. But it's a little heavy and now I'm a little full. So I'm shooting for a beer that is really light on the carbohydrates because I think it makes it more drinkable. And then I want to create body through proteins, not through carbohydrates. So I focus on malts that are moderately modified with protein between 9.8 and 10.5, and a Kobach around 38, 39, 40, right in there. And that gives you the mid-sized proteins that is going to help create mouthfeel, but not carbohydrate. You know what I'm saying? It's like a different type of body. It's a protein-derived body, not a starch or carbohydrate or dextrin-derived body.
Yeah, explain the Kölsch index.
That's a soluble protein over total protein. So it's just like a indicator of the modification of the malt. And there's just a sweet spot there for the protein level and the amount of modification that gives you the mid-sized proteins, right? The big proteins kind of create a little bit of haze problem. The small ones are good for yeast nutrition, like the fan, but you don't want too much fan. And you hit that sweet spot and you get just the right amount of protein in there and creates a nice... What do you guys say? You guys don't say mouthfeel. You guys don't like that word. You guys say
we use
texture.
I do love texture.
Okay, it gives you the right texture.
We should say works within the way the rest of the process which you brew in. There are those brewers that want less modified malt because they're going to run it through a decoction process. It's also going to bust up some of those proteins. And so, it's how you're trying to solve this problem using different kinds of approaches and technology and process in order to achieve it. But you're not decocting, you're step mashing, but then you're going to step mash with a regimen that's with this malt deliberately designed to produce the size of starch and protein molecules that you're looking for. Yeah,
and it comes back to just the drinkability and the crispness. And those mid-sized proteins also help with the carbonation. Like I carb the hell out of my beer. Like they're all around 3 volumes, all my lager beers. So they're really really carbonated, and it's all natural. You can call it spooning. I don't use a spooning valve. I know when my beers are going to finish, and I just cap it or shut the valve on it. And but it's part of the matrix of the beer.
I like that flex. I don't need a spooning valve to tell me when it's we're at this point. And I know when I can relieve the pressure and keep it where it needs to be.
Well, I do force fermentations on all my lager beers. So I like to know exactly where it can finish, right? So I'm not guessing, and I know if it's about a Plato, and again, I don't have someone here 24 hours a day.
10 barrel system, right? And 7 barrel. And you do 7, even worse. And you do forced fermentation tests on every batch of lager.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only brewing once a week, so it's not, it's not that much. And I put it up in my wife's office. It's a little warmer up there. Walk by it, give it a swirl, tell a bartender to go up there, give it a swirl. And it takes 3 days and I'll know exactly what that beer will finish at. And I think people would be surprised if you do a diacetyl rest and you're finishing your lagers up in the mid 50s, you probably don't need to do that. You're going to get there, right? But I start cooling it when it still has a couple tenths to go, which is scary, right? You're going to risk, there's diacetyl risk there. But if your yeast is healthy, you don't go too crazy, just drop it a couple degrees. That helps with getting the carbonation level up there because CO2 is more soluble and colder. So you got to start dropping it a little bit lower so you don't overpressurize your tank. And I know exactly where it's going to finish, so I know exactly when to do that. And I can kind of monitor the end of fermentation because I know exactly what tenth it can get to.
Usually what that then requires is the proper amount of lagering for that potential reuptake. And so you're also giving those beers the time that they need from that perspective.
Yeah, when fermentation's within about 0.3 of terminal, I'll take it from 48 degrees down to 46 and then 44. And then I usually give it 10 days, 7 days at 44. I do forced VDK. And again, being the only brewer, it's a little scary because it's just me and I'm really sensitive to diacetyl. But when you start heating samples up and cooling them down, they always kind of smell and taste a little funky, a little cooked. So I think that I've gotten pretty good at it, but it's not the same as detecting diacetyl in like just a regular sample of beer.
Well, this is a lot of lager discipline for a 7-barrel pub system that serves mostly a tap room right here. But we'll put that craziness aside, and kind of try to talk about more on that kind of fermentation piece using yeast health, yeast viability, and whatnot here in lager beer, and kind of get into strain or strains and how that works from a biological perspective. Because again, you bring that background to it. Before we do that, Brightly Software, a Siemens company, partners with organizations at every stage of their asset lifecycle journey. Brightly is a complete asset management and operations software that enhances organizational sustainability, compliance, and efficiency through data-driven decision-making. Streamline maintenance, simplify capital planning, and optimize resources with solutions uniquely designed to support long-term goals. Learn more at brightlysoftware.com. And tickets are on sale now for the annual Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat, August 23rd through 26th in the hop country of Yakima Valley, Washington. There is nothing like this fantasy homebrew camp experience as you brew in small groups led by some of the most inspiring brewers in the world. Folks like Vinny and Natalie of Russian River, Ben from Breakside, Henry and Adriana of Monkish, Kelsey from North Park, Whitney from Grand Fir, Sean from Lawson's Finest, and more. This year we'll be brewing under the bines at Bale Breaker, and it is sure to be an unforgettable experience. Tickets are on sale now and going fast at brewersretreat.com. All right, Cory. So let's, so you go through this mash process. Is there anything before we, get and talk about fermentation, anything to your step mash, in particular in the way that interacts with the malt that you use?
Yeah. So I'm trying for maximum attenuation, and the last couple years, the 2023 and 2024, the crop out of Germany has had a really high gelatinization temperature. They had a really hot end of the summer during grain fill, and it really affected the gelatinization temperature. So
did you listen? If anyone hasn't listened, you should listen to my podcast with Dmitry Stalins of Adept. And we talked at length about that same issue. And like he was like banging his head against the wall, like with the malt purveyors there.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing it's tough because it's just a climate thing. It's only going to keep getting worse as it keeps getting warmer.
He had some arguments about that. And yes, it is a climate thing. And yes, there are other barley varieties and other ways to grow and, and whatnot, where they can start getting ahead and mitigating, knowing that this is going to continue to be a problem. But I digress. Go listen to that episode.
Okay. So to help mitigate this problem, I've come up with an interesting little mash schedule. So I will actually mash in a little bit warmer, like 149, 150, give it like 10 minutes to try to get as much gelatinization as I can. And then I will inject my cold sauergut into the mash and bring the whole mash down to like 144, 145. I'll rest it there for 50 to an hour, 15. And my thoughts are at 150, I'm really hurting my beta amylase. It doesn't like it up there. But if it's short, hopefully it's still, some of it's going to hang in there and it's not there for too long. And I get as much of the starch gelatinized and in solution, and then bring it down to beta temperature and let the beta, even at a weakened state, if I give it long enough, should get a decent conversion. Then I bring the whole mash up to 160, and I do a glycoprotein rest, which also helps with mouthfeel. It's releasing some proteins at that temperature. Then I go into, I don't do a mash out, so I'm leaving it at 160 do like a 10-minute rest there, then Vorloff. So Vorloff's at the same temperature. So that rest ends up being 30 minutes or so. And then just, transfer over to my kettle, start boiling, boil pretty gentle. It's kind of the new school way. I'm not going for 8% evaporation. It's more like 4.5% evaporation, gentle.
What's the why behind that?
Just thermal stress. You don't want to over coagulate the protein, just don't want to pick up too much color. The malts these days, in my opinion, are malted to not have too much of the DMS precursor. Maybe it's the fact that I have a smaller system and I'm not quite a home brewer, but I do have a decent amount of surface area to volume. The ratio is good, so I don't have to boil too hard. Just treating the beer gently.
60 minutes, 90 minutes?
What would it be? It would be 75 minutes.
Split the difference.
Yeah,
there
exactly.
Yeah.
Hour 15. Hops, I like to use a good mix of the new school German hops and the old ones. I like, the Mittelfrüh. I really like Hersbrucker. I know not a lot of people. I like Saphir. There's a lot of, and I got to thank Firestone for that one, because I feel like there's a lot of new school German hops that we can't get in the United States because no one uses them. But because of Pivo, I feel like Saphir is one that's kind of stuck and it's readily available. But there are other varieties that I would like to get my hands on from Germany that we can't get.
So in that sense, there are times where you'll have as many as 3 different German pills on at the same time here on draft. So you are doing some work to differentiate these and explore different ideas, even in something like pills. How, is that purely hop driven? Is that generally malt driven?
It is mostly hop driven. It is definitely mostly hop driven.
And then how do you think about that from a creative standpoint of building these? Tell me about your envisioning different German pills process.
It's more of just a curiosity, like, what does a Hersbrucker with Tentmeng taste like compared to a Mittelfrüh with Saphir? And they're very similar, but it's fun. You can do that kind of stuff when you're a small brewery, and I feel like you're just taking the customers on a journey with you. It's like, hey, let's try this and see how we like it. And some people like J-Ron can really distinguish the difference quite well on the different hop varieties. Personally, I'm not 100% sure I can, but it's fun. It's fun doing it anyway.
have they settled into some lanes that you really like in terms of hop blends, for some of these German lagers?
So there's like customer favorites and there's my favorites, right? Like customer favorite is Dieter, which is really Mittelfrüh driven, which I do like too. And then my personal favorite is Twice as Nice, which is a very Herzbrucker driven. I'm not sure exactly why that is. It's just...
You haven't tried to like pull it apart as to what you like and why that's different than what your customers like?
I think the Twice might be just slightly more bitter. I really like a bitter Pilsner, and I'm really struggling with balancing like what the consumer expects and what I like. The old model of the brew pubs was always to have like one light yellow crusher beer, so you could never really make a truly bitter Pilsner if that was your only like light drinker, because then you'd have someone going, what's the closest thing you have? Bud Light. And if it's 45 IBUs, you're in trouble. But I have the benefit of having like 5 or 6 just like yellow beers on at any given time. So I can make a more bitter Pilsner, but it still is a little tough for expectations. When someone comes in, they think Pilsner, they think Miller Lite. And it's like, no, this isn't Miller Lite. So
you don't have an American light lager for them?
Sometimes I do, but not currently. Who is you have a coworker who I know likes really bitter.
Oh, Joe Stang. Yeah.
Likes a bitter Pilsner.
Joe and his like 55 IBU Hans Pils from Real Ale. Like he is going to the mat supporting extra bitter pills.
So
I don't always agree with him on that, but I understand what he enjoys about it. We're also like, we're Americans. We love things that are heavy-handed.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I like taking a blend of the old school traditional German techniques, but I am still an American, so I still like to overhop things a little bit. I'll give you some warning. Joe will be here for our best in beer judging with Stan and Kate in probably September. So you just put that on the brew schedule now, that 55 IBU bitter Pilsner, and we will just all come down here and enjoy it with you, and Joe may never leave. All right.
So then, some different kinds of varieties on the Pilsner side. Talk to me about the Helles side. Now, is there anything different in the way that you approach malt on Helles versus Pilsner? Again, you're trying to build a fullness without sweetness.
So not too much with like the mash profile. I use Weyermann extra pale Pilsner malt for the Pilsners mostly because it's really light colored and clean and just gets out of the way.
You sound like an IPA brewer now. Like,
I know.
I just have to have the palest Pilsner malt that I can find.
And for the Helles, I've been playing around with different malts for the Helles. I used to use Barca Pilsner malt for the Helles, but I also use that for the Dortmunder, which is the beer I make the most of. So I brew a lot of Dortmunder, and just to differentiate my export Helles from my regular Helles, I've switched over to a floor malted Czech Pilsner malt. The batch we're drinking right now has a Steffi Pilsner. Ashley got a pallet of it down at Bierstadt, and she doesn't use a full pallet for a batch, so she had some extra bags, and she was able to sell them to me. But that's the malt that's in the Helles right now. But I will switch it up. That's a good beer to just play around with a malt, because it is basically just a single malt, Pilsner.
Yeah, and high attenuation is still the goal there, but a little more malt character in that.
Just by reducing the bitterness, really, is the only thing that makes it a little maltier. I don't mind a little bit of hop flavor in a Helles. The one thing about the Helles is I do not use any high alpha hops at all because it isn't hopped very much. It's a lot of Mittelfrüh and Herzbrucker and Tettnang, like all 3, 2.5 alpha hops, just to get enough vegetal matter in the beer and give it a little character.
Then tell me about the way that you add hops. Is this a pretty traditional hop addition schedule, or are you doing anything differently there?
No, I usually do a first wort hop, a 60-minute hop, either sometimes a 30-minute, but usually a 10, and then a strikeout hop addition.
And you have a hop back that you can throw a whole cone in, but it's harder to get those these days.
It is. At least the German ones. I can get American hops, and I used to really enjoy the American Noble knockoffs, Liberty and Sterling and whatnot, but I feel like 10 or 15 years ago, the hop packaging got a lot better. And so some of the hops we're getting from Germany are actually more representative of what those hops are supposed to be versus back in the 90s, you'd get these German hops. And now I know that those are probably 5, 6, they're old hops you were getting, they don't really care. They just sent you over. You didn't really have control.
Yes. Now also the importers, brokers that are bringing those in, are more exacting. Yeah, they know what brewers want, and they're making sure that they get to brewers in that kind of condition.
It's definitely one of the benefits of lagers taking off in the craft sector is that it's been a lot better getting fresher German hops.
Sure. Well, let's talk about fermentation then. Again, coming at it from a biology standpoint, as you mentioned earlier, big, vigorous, healthy pitch, lots of viable yeast. You're fermenting cold from the very start, and then you're dropping it down colder, and not bringing it up for, to boost things or a diacetyl rest in that kind of fermentation process. So you need a lot of healthy yeast. Talk to me about the yeast choice and then, again, how you treat it through that process.
Okay. So I think one of the most important things, especially for a brewery my size, is to pick a yeast strain and then learn it. Like know what it does, what it likes. It takes a long time. I'm only brewing once or twice a week, so it takes a long time for me to figure out what my yeast likes. But I know what day I can harvest it on. I know I'm figuring out how many kilos equates to what cell count based on how close to terminal gravity it is the day I harvest it. So I use 3470 from BSI. It's a Schonraum strain of 3470. 2 Plato before it hits terminal, I can get enough yeast off a 7-barrel batch to pitch another. It's not ideal. I can barely get enough yeast, but I can in a pinch. 2 Plato. I know if I get closer to 1 Plato, I need exactly 10 kilos to get me a 15 million cells per milliliter cell count. If it's at 1.5 Plato, that's more like 18 or 19 kilos to get me to that same 15 to 18 million cells. So I'm trying to get my cell counts dialed in to where I don't have to do a cell count on the slurry to figure out how many kilos to pitch. So I'm in the process of doing that right now, where I'm figuring out. But it'd be totally different with a different yeast strain, right? Like it would in a different brewery, right? Like it just is, this is how it behaves in my brewery. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to know what day it's going to be harvestable. I know, like I brew on Tuesday, I can brew next Tuesday. Like it's basically a week. It's really nice. My fermentation schedule allows me to just brew like once a week.
And then most of these beers are in a similar kind of starting and finishing gravity range. And so they're going to behave consistently down there. And there's not a lot of hop impact, I guess, on this either. And so, at least you can work within this tighter range, but there's still some variability, right?
So my export lager might be 12.5 Plato and my Helles is 11 Plato. Like that's basically the difference of gravity. So one I can harvest, the Helles I can harvest on day 6 because it's got less Plato to drop. The Dortmunder, it takes, 7 days before I can harvest it. That's it.
Any other kind of secrets or keys to yeast health in this process?
One thing I learned along the way is, like I was saying earlier, I spooned or cap or whatever and really capture a lot of CO2. Well, I was spooning a little earlier and harvesting off of a tank that would have a lot of CO2 pressure on it. And that creates a beer with quite a bit of sulfur and not really the good sulfur, the hydrogen sulfide. Yeast, the 3470 that I use does not like to be under pressure. It'll finish and you'll you'll capture all that
You've got
CO2.
a finicky 3470. Huh?
Well, I mean, it'll ferment fine under pressure.
Your
but
3470 makes sulfur? What are you talking about?
But it is better if. So what I do is I come in and the day I cap it, I wait like 2 hours and then I harvest yeast. Even if I'm not brewing that day, I harvest the yeast, just get enough pressure to push it out of the tank, not create a vacuum, and then instantly chill it down. I bring it into my cooler, stick it in some ice water. If I'm not brewing that day, I give it some nutrients and a little bit of wort extract, BSI's little magic juice you stick in there. And I vent it. I wasn't venting the keg, but when you're harvesting the yeast and it still has a Play-Doh left to ferment, it's going to create pressure whether I put nutrients and wort extract in there or not. It's going to still continue fermenting. Even at 33 degrees, it's still going to create pressure. So I'm venting
Pressure that it then doesn't like.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Well, it still ferments fine. It just is a different fermentation. So I'm just like making sure it's not stressed. It's as happy as it can be.
You don't want to pour this big stinky sulfury yeast into your next batch.
It's got the glycogen reserves are good. The yeast, it doesn't have like a long lag phase. I mean, it has some because I'm knocking out at 42 degrees or 44 degrees. So it's going to be a little slow, but it's happy. It likes its new environment.
Sure. Anything else to lager before we talk about Kölsch for a little bit?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, then let's talk about Kölsch. The Kölsch being a hybrid beer, assume it's a different, ale yeast strain, but still a kind of cold process around it. Where are your points of difference here with Kölsch?
Kölsch is, to me, it is the yeast strain. And if you are like me and you drink mostly lager beer and then you taste Kölsch, it tastes really fruity. It tastes like pear cider to me. It is like, it's like really pear wine. All those things come out to me because I'm used to drinking lager. So to me, it's really easy to distinguish.
And those esters are perfectly, suitable in Kölsch and expected to some degree.
And if you do not drink lagers all the time, you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't even consider it estery. It's just me personally. It seems really estery to me. The Kölsch yeast I use is W177 from BSI. A little bit of differentiation is it is a little bit more of an acid producer. So I'll knock my lagers out at 5.1 pH. The Kölsch, I used to do that, and I realized it would finish closer to 4.1 or 4 for a final pH. It's just a little bit lower. So now I knock my Kölsch out at 5.3. I aerate a little bit more. So if I'm shooting for 8 to 10 ppm for the lagers, maybe 12 ppm for the Kölsch. And what that does is it knocks the sulfur down. If you don't aerate enough, you'll get a little bit more sulfur and less esters. So if you want to boost the esters, I aerate just a touch more. I still knock out colder than fermentation. I ferment at 59, probably knock out at 52. I do not do a long lagering on the Kölsch. The reason I make Kölsch is because it's inhale and I got to turn tanks. So the Kölsch I ferment cold, and I really only give it like a week at 30 when it's done. Fine it and then filter it.
What's the magic of making an excellent Kölsch?
Very similar to making an excellent lager. It's about attenuation. It should be light. It's not.
What's the finishing gravity on your Kölsch?
It starts at 11.3, so I would have to pull out my phone. I get about 83% attenuation on the Kölsch, so it would probably finish at like 1.8, 1.9 in there.
Yeah, so nice and snappy and dry.
Yeah, and then same thing, carbonate it and just a little bit of wheat.
Same 3-ish volumes?
Yep.
A little bit of wheat, is that what you said?
Yeah, just a little bit of wheat. I have to force carbonate the Kölsch a little bit because it's fermenting at a little bit warmer temperature, so I don't get that. I can't capture it all naturally, which is unfortunate, but yeah.
Happens. Well, then let's also talk about, that was the quickest Kölsch discussion I've ever had. But let's talk about IPA here. Yeah, before we started recording, as we were drinking some beer and talking about what we're going to talk about, you made a comment to me that you didn't like old school American IPA, but you love this new iteration of lager-inspired West Coast IPA, the ultra lean, ultra pale, ultra light, with full hop saturation, but nicely balanced and primarily brewed with Pilsner malt and lager yeast. And so this interesting iteration of West Coast IPA as it collides with lager brewing, and you are here for it. How does your lager brewing impact the way that you now make West Coast inspired IPA?
It's really a similar process. I mean, the main difference is I use American malts, American Pilsner malts. So back in the 90s when we would brew
American Pilsner malts, because you can get them just as light or even lighter and
their modification. And I don't know about all of them, but some of them, like the ones that the cool kids are using, like the pure Idaho Pilsner, I don't know about the Gambrinus. I have a feeling that one's probably a little bit higher modification, but you can get domestic malts now that have mid-range protein and have that Kobach in the sweet spot. Does make it a little tougher to get the old school attenuation. So back in the Snake River days, we were getting our malts from Great Western, which is over in Idaho, and it is, right in the middle of AB's got a malt plant over there, Modelo. It's big time malting. And back then, all that malt was higher in protein and super high modification. And it was designed to be brewed with up to 40% corn or rice. It's a different malt completely. And if you brewed 100% with that malt, you'd have way too much fan, and the beer would be a little empty, like some of our domestic lagers are. They just are a little bit empty tasting. Now, because there's so many breweries out there making 100% malt beers, you can get domestic malts that are more suitable for all malt brewing. So you start with that, and then you just hop the heck out of it. And so 7 years ago, 8 years ago or something, there was like hop shortages. It was really hard to get hops. Nowadays, it's one of probably the only benefit of all these breweries closing and all this. It's really sad, but the hop brokers pay attention to all the brewers, even little ones like me. I can get sales guys. I can get people to talk to me about lots. So I can get a pretty good selection of hops versus back in the day, just getting whatever I could. I'm small enough to where I have a chest freezer and I can store 2 years worth of Mosaic in that freezer. So if I find a good lot, I can buy 44 pounds or 88 pounds, and that'll last me a couple of years. And then here in Colorado, there's so many good breweries, and I'm asking for so little. I can just call up the guys from Liquid and say, hey, what lot of Mosaic do you like? And he'll just tell me, and I'll call my hop rep and he'll ship it over. And so that
when
part is
you say Liquid
nice.
Mechanics, you mean Liquid Mechanics.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like the closest brewery to my house.
Yeah. One of these days we'll get Josh on the podcast here. One of these days. So anything else to IPA before we wrap up here? Similar 3470 fermentation for you? Or?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's why the cold IPA was invented, is because there was some lager brewers that had a lot of really nice yeast they were dumping down the drain. It didn't have dry hops in it, so you have access to this nice healthy yeast. So it makes sense to ferment with that, and I'm sure somebody can tell the difference.
Yeast that can also ferment on a warmer temperature.
Yeah.
Like, it's super flexible. It was much more flexible than a lot of people were giving it credit for before.
I would have a hard time telling the difference between Chico and 3470 fermented. I'm not going to say warm, like Luke cool. I don't know what you'd call it. Like in the mid 50s, 60, somewhere like that. There's probably a little bit more of a sulfur kick in there, but like I'm pretty blind to sulfur because I drink so many lagers. And if you mix that sulfur with some of those New Zealand hops, sign me up. Sure.
New Zealand hops. Now you're speaking my language. Well, let's take a big picture look here. You've been brewing for, since the mid 90s. That is and here you are now with your own small family-owned breweries. Truly is, family. Family's the name of the brewery, and family is the story here. A very small business making exactly the beers you want to make and sharing with people the way that you want to share them. What do you hope for in the next few years of Fritz family And, what is your long-term goal for this brewery?
I mostly just want to stay open,
That's fair.
I want to make a living. So, it still is a business. It's not a hobby. Like I have a mortgage like anybody else. Because we're so small, like the margins we just don't have, a lot of extra expenses or cash flow. So it's just, but it's fun, it is.
You can't screw up. You got to nail it each time.
Yeah. And I truly enjoy coming to work every day. Like I try to make sure that I keep it fun. For me, it's a learning process. I try to keep learning every day, whether it's through books, through talking to various brewers, listening to your podcast. I'd like to say experiments at the brewery, but it's not like I have one variable that I'm changing at a time because I only brew. My biggest batch of beer I brew is Dortmunder. I'm brewing it 12 times a year. So there's not a lot of options for doing true experiments, but just little tweaks.
Well, that's fair. Little tweaks, but little tweaks over time, turn into great beers. That is a good place to bring it to a close. G&D Chiller's new Elite 290 Micro Series is built for brewers who care about sustainability and performance. Berkeley Yeast's Dry Tropics London offers their best-selling liquid yeast strain with the ease of use of dry yeast. PacTex handles are made from 100% recycled plastic and are fully recyclable. The multi-layered wonders of Indie Hop Strata are now easier than ever for brewers to tap into with Strata Cryo. The Midea 50/50 Flex can convert to all fridge, all freezer, or half and half with just the touch of a button. Old Orchard is your source for all your beverage needs, from low and no alcohol to hard lemonade, seltzer, cider, and of course beer. Brightly software enhances your data-driven decision-making. And get your tickets now to the Craft Beer and Brewing Brewers Retreat. If you've enjoyed this podcast, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button. If you are a home brewer, you can subscribe to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. If you are a professional brewer, subscribe to the All Access subscription and get both our brewing industry guide and Craft Beer and Brewing and exclusive stories from Kate, Stan, even Ryan Packmeyer. A dozen review submissions per year to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, and 3 seats so that you can share it with other brewers on the team. Cory, if people want to learn more about Fritz family, say they're coming out here in March to do some early round judging for the World Beer Cup, which is just down the street from you here, and they want to learn more, come try some of the beers themselves, where can they find you all in real life and learn more about the brewery?
We're at 6778 North 79th Street in Niwot, Colorado. You need to try our beers here because that's about the only place you can get them.
So hop in an Uber, share it with your brewer friends who are also out there judging. And if you're in Denver for JBF or any other things, you can pop up here as well. It's a nice little tap room and a beautiful little place. And the mountains are just spectacular today. They just look beautiful. The light is so good. So anyway, it's been wonderful talking with you about lager brewing, and I look forward to enjoying another one with you as soon as we wrap this. Cheers.
Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.